body? Where's the energy right now? And if you feel comfortable, maybe put your hand there. Yeah, when we talk about money, it's really in the feels. And of course, because we bring our relatives in with us while we do it, it can be quite remarkable. And I think it's really appropriate for us to just hold that space and put some love into that space. So just give it a touch. Oh, wow, so incredible to be here. My name is Jace Meyer. I am a Métis woman. I'm a digital nomad. I've moved 34 times in my life. I have no traditional territory that I can call my own. I have no intergenerational wealth either, surprise, surprise. And as a very young person, I knew I wanted to be a cycle breaker. I think I made that decision when I was about 3 or 4. What I realized is that I didn't want to become a product of my circumstance. Rather, I wanted to become the consequences of my actions. And that was something that I took with me each place that I went, every opportunity that came. And it really started about being a bit more of like a troubled teenager. It's like, if you go to that party, do you know what's gonna happen? I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get drunk and have fun. And what I realized is that if I could actually imagine the consequences of my actions and was still okay with them, then I knew I was ready. I knew I was ready for the opportunity. And that belief in myself was really critical to the transformation process that I would go on and I'm still on. And it's something that I felt so committed to, I tattooed it to my foot and made an acronym out of it. And I called it COYA, Consequences of Your Actions. And because I got lucky and I was confirmed last night that it was a smart move, I trademarked COYA as well, because I really want it to be a word, I really want it to be a movement, I really want you to believe in the consequences of your actions. And I think when we do that, we'll make a bigger impact in the world. And we use that word a lot, impact. And I wanted to give us an opportunity here today to really break down what that means and why it matters. One of the skills that I got, because my mom gave me a difficult name, my legal name is Jace Rosemary Meyer, is that I needed to learn how to speak up and correct people when they called me by the wrong name. I'm not Jacqueline or Jocelyn or Jacelyn or Jackie Lynn or any of the other names I've ever been given. I'm Jace actually. And that really helped me communicate who I was and why I was in the room and what I wanted to do by being in relationship with other people. And I've been a teacher my whole life, and it's something that I really want to offer to our young people, is that it's not the world happening to them, it's them happening to the world, and they get to shape that. So COYA is really about motivating our own selves, but also recognizing our inherent values and our worth, and then putting it into action. So that's what we're going to do today. On your table, you're going to find a big sheet. Looks like this. And we're going to talk about our why. Over in this top box here, communicating your why for me, if I've spent a lot of time with entrepreneurs, what I realize is that the ones that really go the distance are solving problems that directly affect them or their families or their communities. And when things are tireless and exhausting and hard and frustrating, they still muster up the energy to show back up the next day because they want to solve that problem. They want to mend their heart. They want to contribute to fixing that heartbreak. So when we think about finding a business, we're not just thinking about finding a business that's going to make us money. We're thinking about how do we find a business that we want to wake up every day and put our hard work into. And my belief is that if you can find something that starts with one of your original heartbreaks, you'll go the distance. But not just staying in the problem space, we also have to understand and honor and onboard what brings us joy. So how do you want to experience your day every day is just as important to going that distance. So when we bring those two things together, we have the opportunity then to introduce our skills to those two things. And now we've got ourselves a why statement. So for me, as a young person, I didn't see anybody like myself in school. And I saw how that showed up in all kinds of horrible ways for my peers and myself. And I really wanted to do something about that. What I know I love to do is the same stuff I loved to do when I was 7. Gather up a bunch of people, go out on an adventure, learn some stuff, make some mistakes, get messy, have fun, and then talk about what we learned. And when I reflected on what was I doing when I was 7 and what was that original heartbreak, I realized I think I belong in education. It turns out I don't want to be in a classroom every day because that doesn't lend myself to my best gifts, but somewhere in that space of education I knew I could show up. And I've been able to transfer all of that to different career titles, which is really, really important because I'm a shapeshifter and I've needed to be a shapeshifter in order to thrive. I had to enter into 34 different homes, different places, different schools, different communities, and figure out who was I, why was I there, and how was I going to contribute. So when I figured out how I could say it in 3 snappy little sentences, suddenly it was so much easier to make friends. And people knew how to put me to work. And then people also understood what my value was. And the more I listened to how I was getting called into spaces, the more I was able to refine what my skill set is, how it's growing, and what my community needs of me. So I love that. We heard that yesterday, right? How do I act? How do I be of service? Telling people your why is an invitation to asking for them to join you in the solution space. So practicing this, being proud about it, putting a little bit of humility down for a moment and picking up a little bit more pride brings people in. It's an invitation for people to join you. So what I would love for you to do is, as I continue to talk through this worksheet, is start jotting those things down. You can't be wrong about it. And it can change over time, just as I've had to change over time. But the more we practice this and say it out loud, the easier it gets. So start writing. And as you start to think about that, I want to talk to you about how you can then transfer that why statement into any business that you do. And you're probably going to have to lean into more than one business over your lifetime. And if maybe business isn't quite the thing you're in now, you can think about this at a project-based level. What is the purpose of this project? So when I think about that, it's like, what is that problem that I'm solving? And who am I solving it for? And where am I going to have that impact be felt? And the more we can share that, the more, again, we can invite people in. You're starting to see there's a bit of a pattern, right? That's all about relationships. But we have to speak up first for those things to work. And you're going to be called to different parts on this placemat. And I love that. Pay attention to that, because that's really good thinking and leading and guiding. Maybe you're not sure where to go next. Maybe you're not happy with where you are now. Maybe you're really doubling down in a space, and now this is the evidence that you need to know that. And because we talk about impact, it's really important that we start with impact. I've coached a lot of businesses and worked with a lot of different entrepreneurs who would be deemed successful. But they don't have an impact other than to make a whole bunch of money as fast as possible. And that never really delights me. I'm like, cool. You're not for me. I'm gonna go find my people now, thanks. And what I've realized is that the people that inspire me most know what the impact is that they're gonna make long before they roll up their sleeves and get started. Not always is it in the front of our brain and in our mouth, but it's in our heart and it's in our body and it's somewhere. But it really, as my daughter will say, belongs on the outside. My feelings, she says, belong on the outside. I thank her for her leadership all the time. I learned so much from my little Charlie Rose. And in fact, she's the reason I went into business. I wanted to get away from hustle culture. I wanted to get away from having to be constantly valued based on my productivity level. And the only way I knew how to do that was to birth my own business. And it was a very conscious choice to birth that business, which meant I also conceived it and I nurtured it in myself for a long time before I was willing to bring in birth partners and go through some contractions and the pain of launching and bringing it out into the world. And truthfully, COYA's really young. She was only born in February of this year, so I'm still asking people to wash their hands when they come to visit and bring a meal and not stay too long unless they're really there to help and maybe do some laundry. Because it's really precious to me that in the beginning of our businesses, we make sure that no money or opportunity or just now ask or opportunity takes us away from that core impact that we want to make. So we have to start there. It's not something we bolt on to the end. But if you've already started and you haven't thought about the impact you want to make, it's not too late. It's always just better to start. So we just do that. But how do you think about impact? There's a whole national repository of impact indicators. It's called IRIS, I-R-I-S. And you can go onto the IRIS catalog and look for all kinds of research and social determinants and impact indicators of all kinds of problems that you might be interested in solving. And it'll help you figure out what it is you need to think about, measure, and collect before you get started so that you can get all that baseline data of where are we at today and what is going to happen by the result of me doing my thing in the world, and how can I share that and measure it with people. So I'm a little bit of a data nerd, not because I love tech and data, but because it gives me the tools I need to be a great storyteller and to show up with the facts and to talk about the then and the now and where we're going. And so we think about measuring impact in thinking about who is it that we want to impact, and maybe not just who. They might be our four-legged friends, it may be the land that we're gathered on, but I like to think about all of those people with personhoods, and it keeps me heart-centered in my work. So you're thinking about that ideal market. I never like to use the word target. There's way too much violence in our corporate language, and we're working very hard to take the violence out of corporate language. You know, it's always about like, who's gonna nail it and go out front and beat them and all of the things. It just isn't good. So ideal market instead of target for me. And how many people will change, or how much will be impacted. So the scale of it. And where will it be felt? So it's the scope of it. Is it just gonna be in your community, the next community over? Is this a global movement? And how much change can we expect? And over what time? And when you start to think about those things, suddenly you have OKRs and KPIs and sales targets and goals and onboarding documents for your team and friends who understand what it is that you're doing and can communicate it. And it just starts with filling out those boxes right there. And just keep coming back to them, and they can change and adapt over time. It's really beautiful actually when they do. And then of course, we don't just go into business to not make money. Things still cost money, and we have to be really realistic about that. You can have the most beautiful purpose in the world, but if you're bankrupt, you're gonna have a very limited impact. So we need to think about our money and be really wise to that, which is why we've done this in a certain order. How do we feel about money? What do we know about money? What do we want to do with money? And then how do we put it into action? So once you start to accumulate some of that wealth, knowing what you're gonna do with that money is just as important as having it. So then we start to think about, what is our impact thesis? What is our investment impact thesis? So I could spend $1 at Walmart, or I could spend $1 in this room. One of those dollars matters way more to me, and I believe that every dollar is a vote, and where we spend our money is what we're gonna get more of. So I made a very conscientious decision to try and put as much of my money into our economy. So if I can buy soap from someone, it's gonna be an Indigenous soap maker, not Walmart. And the more we vote that way, the more the world notices. So I really love the idea of everybody having an investment impact thesis. Even if you don't have $5,000 to invest yet, whatever money you do have, you can be thinking of yourself as an impact investor by just changing your mindset. And the more that you accumulate, the more of impact you're gonna gather, and it's gonna gain momentum. So there's a really beautiful and simple little thing that you can fill out. Like, how much do I invest? In what stage of company, if I really want to paper a full investment? In what sector or what kind of company? Where do I want to think about them being geographically located in the world? And how is that company going to support the benefit of the next 7 generations in Mother Earth? And if they can articulate that, then I'm going to bring my money somewhere else. And asking that question is such a beautiful way to bring your power back anytime the power dynamic is imbalanced. Ask that question, and suddenly the person who has a whole bunch of money but no answers realizes they need you a heck of a lot more than you need their money, and it changes everything when you go into any kind of banking relationship or conversation with money. And so there's a whole bunch of hints into this placemat so that you don't have to do this on your own. But what I really would encourage you to do is to not worry about making mistakes with this. This is not about perfection. This is about being in a constant state of iteration, from moving from surviving to thriving and shape-shifting as many times as we need to get there, and articulating and telling our story as we do that so that we can bring more people into the solution space. The Indigenous economy requires every single color of the medicine wheel. We don't need an Indigenous TSX. We need everyone to recognize our inherent value and for us to call in what that's worth. We set the price and the rules of engagement. And this placemat was designed to help you do exactly that. So it's my gift to you. I would really value if you were to tag COYA Productions in any version, scribbly. I'm a teacher by training, so I can read all of it. Tag me in it so that we can hold each other accountable in a really beautiful way, so that we can be in relationship of growing and scaling our impact together. Because as I said in the beginning, we are Indigenomics. And we have to stand up very proudly and assert that for ourselves. And it really requires us to tell our stories. So that is my offer, my invitation, my gift. And I can't step off this stage without just saying, Carolyn Hilton, thank you for giving me the words that didn't exist in the world. And once I had Indigenomics as a hashtag many, many, many years ago, before books and Google and all of the appropriate level of attention and respect that you've carved out for yourself in the world, you helped me really find myself. And that's because you weren't afraid to say what your why was and what kind of impact you wanted to make and who you wanted to bring into the solution space. So I raise my hands to you as an auntie and a role model that's guided me in my work with COYA. And I really hope that all of you leave Indigenomics SHE believing in the consequences of your actions. Tuning. And then you're just right that whole thing.
Woohoo!
It's funny and awesome. Just for one time, that never happens. That's so beautiful. And so I'm gonna get off the stage here and just I have to say, to know that Andrea Menard is coming up on the stage next is just so dreamy. So I'm just gonna stay in that moment for a second and make you all one more time. And to my panelists, one more round of applause for everybody.